Well, it's 5:03. I did a little, I did a little, I looked up the word mercy, and it's the power to forgive and be kind. And that means we're able to do admirable things, to stretch beyond our anger, our disappointment, to summon, as someone else put it, the imagination and the will to reform ourselves yet again. So I kind of, mercy is a powerful thing. Mercy is a powerful thing, and I'm so thankful for these tellers who were willing to tackle this. What I'm going to do is introduce each teller with a quote. I've got a quote for myself that I'll save till the end of the show if it's appropriate. But right now, see if you can guess who this one is from the quote. His quote is, "If I can think of something to do that might help save the world, and I don't at least try, I would really just be a dick." That really restores my faith in humanity. He tells a brand new story. Dylan Brody.
Thank you so much, Anne. I cannot believe how apt your intro about Mercy is to the story I'm about to tell. Eventually, one must write a brand new story. When I was 3 years old, I had learned to put differently shaped blocks into differently shaped holes. It had been asked of me on several different occasions, different versions of shapes and holes. Sometimes they were pegs that went into a box through holes in the lid, and sometimes they went into the sides of a dodecahedron made of plastic that smelled funny if I licked it and then put it to my nose. Some cutout animal drawings that fit into very shallow cutout animal drawing shaped holes in a flat board allowed me to solve and resolve the world's least interesting jigsaw puzzle. My point is, I had every reason at this time to believe that fitting objects into holes was going to be a huge part of my responsibility in the world. And also, I was growing fairly confident in my ability to mess around with objects until they fit into the appropriate holes. Small and low to the ground at that age, I discovered a shining copper disc on the floor. I hands and knees to pick it up from behind the chair where I had spotted it, and I saw the slots low on the wall. They seemed disguised to me as a pair of decorative faces, two vertical eye slits, and then an open, gaping, startled mouth. And I wondered briefly where I might look for the pieces that corresponded to the other two shapes before setting about figuring out which of the holes the penny was supposed to fit into. I was pretty sure it was one of the two slightly bigger slots, but I didn't matter. I was pretty good at fiddling with a shape until I figured out how it fit. I genuinely believed I was about to learn something about the whole mysterious grown-up world. I had already figured out a little bit of it. I was to look for things that fit and then figure out how. I saw the spark jump from the outlet to the penny, not as a flash of cat fur static, but as a small lightning bolt. It snapped and danced long enough that I saw the rhythm of its movement matching the spasm of my muscles from my gripping fingers to a spot just past my wrist. Then shock-numbed digits released my tiny prize, the imagined key to the discovery of my purpose. And I stumbled back, frightened. The sharp spreading pain drew my attention to a soot-covered fingernail and fingertip, and a white blister burn ran the length of my finger pad. I was 3, so that's not a huge length, but it hurt a lot. This began my difficult relationship with money. Now, my father, by the time I was born, had veered from conservative upbringing to an academic activism with some well-practiced pro-communist rants. He's since softened first into a Hegelian socialist and then into a detached centrist and now into a tired recluse with the healthy pension one can accrue if one is willing to spend a lifetime, I guess, inside an institution. I used to feel he was living through my accomplishments, and frankly, lately I've begun to feel that he is living through my inheritance. My point is, I grew up a red diaper baby in a red diaper household, swaddled in the rhetoric of bargaining collectives, and I had an early understanding of the corporate hold on the American psyche and the psychological tricks and manipulations woven by the marketing and advertising industry. I understood as a child the ways in which capitalism by its very nature comes to poison the arts and the sciences and all those areas that were once the purview of the shaman, all the old magics. My mother, a liberal to her core, if asked, felt very uncomfortable around anyone she considered poor, which included, for the record, the working non-intellectual class. She ridiculed and belittled anyone she perceived as nouveau riche, whom she'd eaten as pretentious. From a working class Jewish family in New Jersey, she harbored genuine, unarticulated dreams of somehow becoming old money. Now, here's a phrase you don't hear often: lucrative career as a humorist and storyteller. I found this on a list of sadly underused expressions I curated during a brief bout of depression in the late 90s and early to mid aughts. I discovered 47 college ruled revisions half crumpled in a trapper keeper I accepted from a 9-year-old boy as security against a poker debt. It was not a good time for me. I had written this phrase over and over again on every last version of the list of sadly underused phrases, sometimes at the top, sometimes down near act of corporate generosity and post-petroleum future. As I emerged from that depression, the one I call the initial incident of recurring, remitting, early onset midlife crisis, I began finding ways to augment my meager creative income by taking up jobs ghostwriting and doing punch-up work, whatever would allow me to feel less, as though I had gone from living off my parents to living off girlfriends to living off my wife, while pursuing a multifaceted career in unfettered artistry unrewarded. This is not by any means a complete description of what I did during those years. This self-indulgently self-loathing assessment. I performed comedy, I wrote spec scripts, I produced small shows, and some big shows I developed skills. I sometimes made small piles of money, but never quite enough to feel like I was caught up, much less getting ahead of my debts. The woebegone, ever impoverished, wholly dependent slacker self-image collapses under observation like a quantum wave, but depression allows no light by which anything may be seen undistorted. I did not know why other comics at the same level as I seemed to be doing so much better, why my writing wasn't selling, what I was doing wrong. I didn't realize that I had learned to avoid money the way anybody who is not an idiot avoids the plague. Now, when I met the woman who we will call Myra, because that is her name, she wanted to hire me. I don't remember ghostwriter screenplay or collaborate with her on it. I don't something. She came into a vinyl booth diner with a sweatshirt and a clashing scarf, sweatpants. I think she looked frazzled, as though she wanted to apologize for being late or for being tired or for being underdressed or for being in public. I wondered if she was an addict. I had over the years written dozens of screenplays for people for no charge. Look, if it helps you out, throw me something if you can sell it. I came to Hollywood believing we were all in it together, artists out to make a difference in the world. If I was just going to write whatever someone was going to pay me for, what was the point? If I could help someone I knew get an opportunity just by throwing a couple of drafts of a script to the page over a couple of months, hell, that was worth doing. I was trying to be a grown up now. I was not going to offer to do that again. She had an idea for a script. It was in her head. She'd written before a short. She needed someone to do it with her or for her. I couldn't speak aloud my rates as a ghostwriter. I imagined her counting out the thousands in crumpled bills from pockets and socks. I imagined, I had vague memory now as I think back on it of her at some point saying, I might be able to get some money from my mom to pay you. And I was trying to avoid saying twice guild scale to ghostwrite, scale plus 10 if you want to hire me credited. And I was also trying to shape the words so they would come out of my mouth. And finally, I offered to coach her through the script at no charge. She could do this on her own. She could learn to do this. She could keep her money. She could develop a skill. I could help. That settled. We talked about other things. At one point, you said a thing that clearly and concisely stated an obvious fact, so utterly clear and crystal in its phrasing that it changed the way I thought about money immediately. It made such an impression that I began rewriting her words for use on stage. I don't remember exactly what she said, but the idea that I boiled it down to was this: capitalism itself depends on the patently absurd, wholly obsolete pre-industrial notion of unlimited natural resources. Once I had seen it, I could not unsee it. I coached her through her screenplay. I didn't notice that I had avoided trading any of my skills or work for money once again. Sometimes my personal development occurs at a speed it once made sense to call glacial. When I prepared to shoot the original Dylan Brody's Driving Hollywood special, available now at Next Up Comedy and Amazon Prime, don't look it up now, I'm talking, I asked her if I might use the insightful line about capitalism. And she seemed excited that people would hear the idea, and more, it seemed that I had remembered it. As far as she was concerned, we were all in this, artists working together, doing something. A wonderful therapist helped me begin to parse my own many tales of parental malpractice and infantile self-induced shock aversion therapy. I worked with a success coach who strove to break through the psychological barriers between me and the rich financial reward I so obviously deserve. I increased my income and my comfort with income incrementally over the years. An anti-capitalist struggle junkie weaning himself off sympathetic poverty. As I built my company and began hiring people, optioning works, licensing works, doing show business, I learned the joy of paying people and paying taxes, some of which go to things I abhor, but all of which help me feel like part of something bigger than myself. Recently I got into a jam, a project of mine. I attracted some big talent. It became cast and it was in production, and suddenly it required a budget well beyond anybody's expectations. Myra, who had read the play, who had known me since the day she bustled into the end of my impoverished depression, who still seemed forever broke and deep in struggle, said, "How much you need?" I said, "More than any of us has on hand." She said, you know I'm loaded, right?" I paused for a long moment. An impossible thing seemed to be happening. It was the start of a long con, or the first half of the nightmare before the humiliation and the exposure and the inescapable slow reveal, repeat, refrain, shame. She said, "I love this play. Do you know how much we contribute to the arts every year? How much do you need? You can get it from my mom. Money should never be a problem for anyone. Why do you think I don't work? I'm not going to trade my time on earth for money I don't need when there are so many people out there who need that money and that job." I felt confused. I felt a tingling in my fingertips that I attributed at that moment to the use of cold medication, although I wonder now if it was the last residual memory of getting burned, trickling out its last feeble charge. And in my head, I began to write a brand new story. I'm Dylan Brody. Thank you very much for having me, Anne. I love doing this show. I'm going to put a couple of links for things in the chat window if anyone wants to check them out. I would love to have you in my sphere of influence and awareness.
Dylan, I always appreciate your deluge of words.
I
Oh,
that's how I like to think of my work.
I always appreciate it. It keeps me going.
Well, thank you very much. I just strive to not suck, young lady.
And thank you for a news story. And next up is this quote, the shortest one of the concert. 3 words: sparkle and circulate. Words of advice from her mother. She tells Fissure, "Welcome back, you sparkly thing, Susie Duff."
Thank you, beautiful Dr. Sis. Thank you. Thank you. And it's so great to see everyone here. Bless you all. And thank you for being here. And uh, gosh, Dylan, thank you for that great story. And thank you. I haven't heard, hey, you know, I'm loaded. I don't remember in that context. I can't remember the last time I heard that. So it was great to hear. I was like, what? That was fantastic. And thank you. And the good Dr. Ann Buxey, as everybody knows, I think you're in your 4th decade, Annie, of bringing tellers to the world. And gosh, we love you and thank you for doing this. And especially at this time, these stories are so, so important. So bless you and thank you for that. And my story comes with a warning for those of you who may be a little squeamish or get a little queasy. My story involves, and again, Dylan, bless you and thank you for saying the word shaman, which is a word that these guys mostly can't stand. My story involves a very powerful medicine man who happens to be on this Zoom right now, who is from the Oglala Sioux Nation, a Lakota, and it involves what Shakespeare himself, the bard, so delicately referred to as our nether regions. So if anyone has any problem ahead of time, even thinking about what that could mean, this might be a great time to go do your taxes or write that screenplay or draft a letter to a prisoner of conscience, and then you can just mute me and then come back when you see I'm no longer speaking. So you're warned that this could get a little squeamishy. So I pray that what I'm going to say will benefit you to hear and me to say. The good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, whom we celebrate this weekend, his genius, said so many wonderful things. And one of my favorite is a seldom known quote that is, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And I epitomized that concept in a generation ago in 1996. I was lying on my side, shivering, terrified, furious. I was shivering because I've been told that in operating theaters, which is what they call these places and what the sign on the door of the famous father-son Beverly Hills Proctological Medical Corporation, Dr. Gary and Gary Hoffman, had on their door, their operating theater needed to be kept cold for the instruments that they sharpen and use to cut and scrape and pull and grab. So I guess germs don't like the cold, and I had to figure out how to like it as I was lying on my side, shivering, terrified, because nobody cuts me. I don't even have my ears pierced. It's kind of a thing of pride in my life. And at that time in 1996, I was into my second decade of dealing with traditional American Indians who, as many of you may or may not know, and it's another story for another time, are very familiar with the concept of cutting, with piercings and tattoos and etc. And I can't tell you how many times in ceremonies I had said to those guys, one of whom I was married to, no thank you, that's okay, I don't care to give flesh, as they call it. So nobody cuts me, and there I was, freezing, shivering on my side, about to get cut in my nether region. And I was furious. I was furious at the guy who is on this Zoom right now, my brother by Indian Way. Again, another story for another time. The powerhouse medicine man, Lessert Moore. Lessert Moore, who has one of my all-time favorite Indian names, along with John around him and Gwen Going Snake and the entire horse-looking family. So his name, Lessert Moore, is actually Les Moore. And that is exactly what he is like. He is hilarious, except when he's not, which was how he was when he was on the phone with me, telling me that the spirits had told him in the ceremony that he had to try to help me that I had waited too long. You waited too long, Apple Juice. They all call me Apple Juice because of my eating habits. You have to go and let that doctor do that operation. That had come about because I had finally gone an allopathic Western MD method after trying everything that sort of ends in an ick: organic, homeopathic, naturopathic, all the icks, to try to literally heal my butt. And none of it was working. And so one day when I was crawling on my hands and knees, my 9-year-old son called a friend of mine and said, I think my mom's sick. Can you help us? And that's when I went to the famous father-son Beverly Hills proctological team, proctologists to the stars, the doctors Hoffman, who, when Dr. Hoffman, the son of that famous team, took a look at me, said, how have you been living with this pain? This is insane. I would operate on you right now, but, and I guess the pun was intended, I have to do another operation that has already been scheduled. You will be the first thing Monday morning. This was a Friday afternoon, and I said to him, so operation means cut, correct? He said, yes, that's the only way you're going to heal this anal fissure. I've said it. That's what it was. And it is like having a razor blade twirl in your butt with every heartbeat. It's the most horrendous nightmare of pain I would never wish on anybody. So I made the appointment and then called my friendly neighborhood medicine man who is on the Zoom right now, Lessert Moore, the powerful Lakota medicine man, Sundance chief, Mr. Heap Big Indian medicine man, and said, "You got to help me. I, I can't believe this. Here's what's going to happen." He said, "Let me have a ceremony." We had the weekend. And Sunday night, after his ceremony, he called me. He said, "Apple juice, the spirit said you waited too long. You have to go. Let that doctor operate on you. Now, we're going to take care of you and you're going to be okay. You have to trust us next time and come to us first." I was furious. This guy goes and finds bodies in like the star world. This guy is a powerhouse and he couldn't help his little sister with her butt. So there I was on that table, shivering, terrified, furious, all at the same time. I had my Italian grandma's rosary in one hand, blessed by the Pope, and my Irish grandma's rosary in another hand. And the beads were like made out of peat or mead or something from Ireland, holding them up against my chest just to try to stop the trembling in my body so that I could help them do a good job on my butt without shaking so badly that that would be worse than I thought it even would possibly be. When I heard Dr. Gary Hoffman, son of the famous father son proctological team, a proctologist to the stars in Beverly Hills, say, "Okay, you're finished." And I thought, oh, you know what? Oh, I fainted from the pain. Oh my God, this must have been so horrifying. I'm just, oh, wow, I didn't feel a thing. And so I was lying there for a second and I heard him repeat it. "Okay, you're finished." And I thought, that's weird. I'm still freezing. Don't they like cover you up or something in here? Why am I, wait a minute. Why am I not feeling that horrendous pain? What has just happened? And I turned and I rolled over, and there was Dr. Hoffman, exactly where he was when I climbed on to his operating table in the operating theater. And standing next to Dr. Hoffman was his very efficient nurse with the giantest syringe you will ever think of seeing in your life, with the longest needle you will ever think of seeing in your life, that had been meant for my rear end to stick into my anus to numb it so that he could cut on it. She was in the exact same position, and so was that apparatus of torture that was going to go into my butt. And the other thing I noticed as I sort of really looked at that needle and then went to her face was that her eyes were bugged and her jaw was actually dropped. And I said, "What happened? Am I in a dream?" And Dr. Hoffman said, "You're finished." I said, "No, I heard that 3 times. What happened?" And he said, uh, "You're fine." I said, "Was the operation a success?" He said, "There was no operation." And vaguely, I started to hear Lessert Moore's words in my head. "You have to go let the doctor operate on you. We will take care of you. You will be fine." And I said, "I'm sorry, I thought you said the only way to fix this was to cut it out and to operate." He said, "That's right." I said, "That was on Friday. This is Monday. What's the difference?" He said, "Your butt's like a baby's butt." I said, "Well, what was it like on Friday?" He said, "Raw hamburger meat. I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice with my dad." I said, "You know what? Let me make a phone call really quickly if I can." Now, this is the 90s. So this is before cell phones. So I said, "Can you please tell me where the nearest payphone is?" And they're looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I have to go make a phone call to a medicine man." And they went, "What?" I said, "I'll settle up the bill in a second." I don't remember how I found that payphone on Brighton Way. I don't remember how I happened to have so much change in my wallet that I was throwing thousands of coins in at the time to reach Lessert Moore, the powerful Lakota medicine man from the Oglala Sioux Nation, who somehow answered my phone on my call on the first ring and said, "I'm eating." And I said, "Very funny." And there was this pause that began this telephonic payphone game of chicken that I was very uninterested in playing and knew I had to do every single thing he was about to say. And I said, "What happened?" And he said, "I don't know. Why don't you tell me what happened?" And I said, "I'm fine. There's no fissure. I'm healed." He said, "Yeah, I told you." I said, no, you told me. And then we both said at the same time, you had to go to the doctor and have the operation. He said, I also told you we'd take care of you. That's what we did. I did. I was up all night. Now, can I please finish my breakfast? I said, tell me exactly what you did. What I can tell you is that Lessard is what's known as a heyoka. These are the tricksters. These are some of the most powerful beings in all of medicine. They say things backwards. They say things in jokes. They say things in riddles. And suddenly I realized, oh my gosh, I have had heyoka medicine literally up my butt. And I said to him, well, I guess I'm going to hear this. And I guess I'm going to understand exactly what you've been telling me. Go to you guys first. I've got the kid. You've got the medicine. You guys will take care of me. He said, that's absolutely right, sister. And then we ended that phone call the way almost every phone call we've had for 40 years ends, which is him laughing, saying, you drive us crazy. You drive me crazy. I love you. And I said, thank you. I love you. And enjoy your breakfast. And he said, yeah, enjoy your new butt. Bye. He had mercy on my butt with those spirits. And what I can absolutely promise you is that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is 1,000% correct about faith. I had faith. I felt like I was tumbling down those stairs. Faith is taking that first step, even when you can't see the staircase. I couldn't see my butt. And I'm going to suggest to you that if you ever choose to have that kind of faith, you might want to consider having a friendly neighborhood medicine man in your back pocket, because he literally could save your butt. Mitakoyasi.
Susie, thanks for bringing us that story, Susie, and thanks for bringing Lessard more, to us, and making, telling him about us and sharing him with us as he is able to. But thank you for that story, Susie.
Thank you, beautiful Dr. Sis.
Okay, this quote is from Pam Munoz Reina. Do not ever be afraid to start over. An encouraging quote. He tells the 5 orphans, Antonio Sacre.
Thank you, Susie and Dylan, for those amazing stories, and Anne as well for holding the space. My father comes from Cuba. And when you are the son of an immigrant, there is no way you can win the battle of how hard life is for you. There is no job I've had that has lasted longer hours than my dad has worked. There is no situation I've gotten in that is any worse than his entire family leaving Cuba in the early 1960 and coming to Miami with what they could carry from Cuba. As a father, I have 2 children. There is no story I can tell my mom that can top stories of what she had to deal with raising my 2 brothers. I was born on September 23rd, and as my mom was leaving the hospital, cradling her brand new firstborn baby, the nurses in Boston Lion Inn said, "Oh, Mrs. Sacre, you don't want to step on the stalk painted on the floor, or you're going to be back here in 1 year with another baby." And my mom said, "I'm not superstitious." And she walked over to that stork and she stomped on it once and she stomped on it again. And exactly 1 year later, she gave birth to twin boys. So in 1 year, my mom had 3 boys, Irish triplets. My mom says, "I'm a candidate for sainthood." My dad says, 3 boys in 1 year. That is the man that I am, And so when I had my first child, who is now 12 years old, I said, Mom, it's so hard to get him all bathed in that little tub. She says, oh yeah, try it with 3 babies. Mom, it's so hard to get him into his little diapers. Try it with 3 babies, whatever I came up with. And my mom would come over and visit. And then I had a child 3 years later. So 2 children in 3 years, not as tough as 3 boys in 1 year. And my mom would play with my 2 children. She would read to them. She would try to get on the floor and play with them. And it would be amazing. My wife and I so tired with that beautiful grandma there with our children. And things would be good for about 30 minutes. And then my mom would say to her grandson, hey, I want the blue Matchbox car. And the little 4-year-old son would say, no, Momo, I want the blue car. She goes, no, I want the blue car. I want to give it to Nina. And she'd give the blue car to Nina, and he'd start crying, and Nina would start crying. And I'd come in, and there's the kids crying. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? She goes, ha. What do you think of that? 2 kids crying. What about 3 kids crying, huh? She would pick fights so that I could know how hard it was for her. My cousins, there are 15 first cousins on my mom's side of the family. They're this big Boston Irish Catholic clan, and all of those 5 uncles and aunties had at least 3 to 5 children. So there's 15 kids, from Eiley Rose, the oldest, all the way down to Marky, the youngest, and there are 6 years that separate those 15 cousins. And whenever we get together, which has now been a couple of years since we've all seen each other, really, we all have stories about how bad our parents were. Part of it was the 70s. Do you remember the 70s, what that was like? Seatbelts didn't exist. You could fire all 15 cousins in one car. All of us piled up on top of each other with the little station wagon window down in the back, so the carbon monoxide would crawl in. Little Marky would have no seat on anybody's lap, so Uncle Tom would put him on the dashboard in between that glass, and we drive to the beach, and we would come home, and there'd be no food anywhere, because they all would go out drinking. They were a bunch of Boston Irish drunks, all 5 of them. And it was a blast because we never saw the adults. It was just us 15 kids within 6 years of each other, not an adult to be found. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Oh my, we did things that I don't know that you're allowed to allow children to do these things anymore. And so we loved it. And the older we got, the more of the shenanigans that happened. We loved to steal the beer from the uncles and the aunties, and the smokes from the others. And then it just became this abandoned craziness. And then one year, all of us in our late teens, early 20s, we all sat around and told stories of all of the things that we had endured from those 5 uncles and aunties. Uncle Tom's story of how he left all the kids in the car. We had to go into the bar and get drunk, and he forgot about them. They were all pounding on the window. I don't know why they couldn't open the doors. I don't understand that part of the story. Uncle Pat's story of taking the kids down to the ice at the lake before it was frozen and just letting them skate. All 3 kids went through the ice. No big deal. They saved the kids. We love to tell that story. My mom's story of she was walking outside the house one day, and the neighbors are like, "What are you doing out there, Mary?" She says, "Well, it's better than going inside and killing my 3 kids. Isn't that right? Don't you think that's right?" My mom would explain to me what that was like. And so we were all talking about it. And Uncle Pat came in. He says, what are you scallywags doing? Well, Uncle Pat, because we're pretty honest in the family, you guys were not such good parents. He says, yeah. Well, you know why? Why, Uncle Pat? He says, you know what? Your mother, he pointed at me, killed our mother. I was 20 and I'd not heard this story. I'd never met my grandparents. Turns out my mother's mom died giving birth to my mom. And all 4 of those older brothers and sisters blamed that 6-month-old infant for killing their mother. And they all had to deal with that. And my grandfather dealt with it by disappearing. He was gone. Nobody knew where he went for 15 years. And all 5 of those brothers and sisters, including that young 6-month-old infant who killed her mom, and those 4 older brothers and sisters, escaped into the foster care system of Boston, Massachusetts in the 1950s. And none of them learned anything about being raised by a parent or raising their own children. And they all, as they got older, met these amazing uncles and aunties, these in-laws that they married and did the best that they could. And Uncle Pat said, we did the best that we could. And my cousins and I looked at each other and we thought about that. And my brother said, you know, it's like they're all diabetics and they couldn't get insulin. You wouldn't be mad at people if they couldn't get their medicine. These were 5 uncles and aunties who got nothing that they could latch onto. And it was in that moment that I realized that I had to think differently, aside from how fun it was in some ways, but I had to think differently about what that was. And so with my own 2 children, I make sure they know the good and the bad of those uncles and those aunties. And we get together and we remember them. And now there are 3 of the 5 left. And my mom loved coming to Malibu, Tales by the Sea. She loved sitting on that balcony in the back and looking out at the water and sitting in that beautiful space, listening to the stories from the other storytellers. And when we would all be together afterwards together, she would come up and she would say, oh yeah, good job. Dylan, you may or may not remember this. Dylan, that was great. Not as good as my son, but it was okay, you know? And she would embarrass me in front of every single one of those storytellers. She says, yeah, my son was the best. There was nobody better here than my son. And I was like, Mom, it's great. No worries. And we would have soup afterwards. And my mom, 4 years ago, passed away. I was there with her last day. And I said, Mom, you are the one who helped me be a writer. And she said, oh, I didn't know that, honey. She knew that. We talked about that a million times. And I said, you are so loved. And she said, one of the last things she ever said to me, you know, that's right, honey. I am really lovable. And I went home and I wrote that down. And 4 years later, I still talk about her and think about her. And my cousins and I are as wonderful and as flawed parents as our uncles and aunties were. And I can't wait till we all get back together to tell these stories in person.
You know, Antonio, you can hear me, right? Your mom said that she didn't know that she was the one who made you a writer. And it just reminds me of how we love to hear a story again, those good stories, because every time I hear a story again, like I might ask Susie to tell Fissure again sometime, because they include different details and you find out more about the person when they tell it again. I'm always trolling for that extra bite. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Antonio.
My pleasure, Anne. Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Oh, the next quote's from Mark Twain. The older I get, the more clearly I remember things that never happened. Oh, life just gets more exciting, doesn't it? She tells unlikely friends. Here she is, Annie Corzin.
Our friend Charlie got married for the second time to a woman named Pamela. Pamela was an older, refined Gentile from a small town in Ohio, and she had what I would call old fashioned conservative values and dressed accordingly in navy blazers and pearls. It was clear from the get go that Pam and I had nothing in common, but I had to make it work because I loved Charlie. I have been through this more times than I care to count. Why is it that interesting men marry dull women? But Pam was a special challenge. For starters, how could I possibly be friendly with a woman who hates garlic? Even worse than that, she actually complained to me about a dinner party she went to where the hostess offered my dream menu, 3 different kinds of pasta. Annie, she served noodles. How cheap is that? Pam was a political junkie, and until recently, I really had no interest in the real world. Her favorite actor was Sir Laurence Olivier. She thought Brando was sloppy. And then one day, Pam asked me, Annie, do you by any chance know anyone who's ever tried marijuana? And that's when my suspicion was confirmed that Pam and I lived on separate planets. But as time went on, I began to discover that she did have some useful qualities. Pam was a professor. She taught film history, women's studies, and the great books. Plus, she herself wrote historical novels. In other words, Pam knew everything about everything. The Greeks, Einstein, Darwin, Shakespeare, and I found that very convenient because since I, on the other hand, know nothing about nothing, Pam allowed me to use her as my own private Wikipedia. If I would ask Pam what people ate for breakfast in the 16th century, she would say, well, Annie, were they of the peasant class or the feudal class? And then, off the top of her head, she would just roll out this information about the bread and cheese and mutton and ale, which, by the way, sounded a lot tastier than the slimy green jello mold she was serving at that moment. So I thought, well, to be courteous, I really should read one of her novels. So I chose The Shield of Three Lions, which is about Richard the Lionhearted and the Crusades. What was I thinking? My idea of a good book is a story about a woman who is dealing with a cheating husband as she's trying to solve a murder. I was not looking forward to 500 pages of God's feet, 'twas wondrous indeed. Well, I got the shock of my life. Pam's book was so bloody, so bawdy, so scatological, I could not believe it had been written by Mrs. Prim and Proper. Clearly, I had misjudged her. Clearly, a person who could write so enthusiastically about pooping and peeing and farting and fucking is a person worth knowing. And so that's how it came to pass that Pam and I became best friends. We would talk a couple of times a week about friends, family, books, movies, travel, whatever. But I always dreaded that inevitable question. So, Annie, tell me, what are you working on? That drove me crazy because I had a secret shame, which was that I really wasn't working on anything. I always suspected that I might be really smart and I might be really funny, but I never figured out what to do with that except to be a depressed, mostly unemployed actress who was a lively dinner guest. Pam, too, seemed to expect more from me, and so, at the ripe old age of blah 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 blah, I started looking around for something to do. Well, I thought maybe I would try my own hand at writing, but what would I write about? There's only one subject that fascinates me: me. So I started with some personal essays, and Pam urged me to turn them into a show. I called it Yenta Unplugged, and it took a long time to explain the meaning of those words to Pam. I did early versions of the show in her living room, and when it finally got produced, Pam was our first investor. I returned the favor by causing her to lose every penny. Then I published some magazine articles and a book and created a few more solo shows and recently discovered a whole new audience on TikTok. I would not call myself a great success, and I have the bank account to prove that, but Pam gave me the gift of a vocation, and it's the engine that runs my life. And there was a bonus. I discovered that Pam's boring, conservative, old-fashioned, small-town values of discipline and diligence and productivity were a low-cost cure for depression. I dreamed about paying Pam back for everything she'd done for me, and I got my chance finally when she was having trouble finding a new literary agent. I hooked her up with my friend Julia. It was a match made in heaven. Julia, unlike me, and Pam had a lot in common. They were both Quakers married to Jews. Their idea of pop music was Gilbert and Sullivan, and they both shopped retail. Pam was generous in all kinds of ways, but as she got older, she got a little absent-minded, which sometimes caused a problem. Like one day she said to me, she asked me if I liked my Christmas present. What present? It turned out that she had sent me a package of New York delicacies from a Zabar's catalog, but she had sent it to an old address, and the new tenant signed for it and accepted the package. So I gave her my new info, and the following year, she sent that same package from that same catalog to that same old address. So for 2 years in a row, some scuzzball in Beverly Hills ate my Christmas locks. Pam passed away a while back. It was not a tragic ending. She was in her 90s. She had lived a full and fulfilling life. Well, that's fine for her. But what about me? I miss her. And let me say this about death. Not a fan. At the memorial service, speaker after speaker got up and spoke about how Pam had taught them, encouraged them, inspired them. I hated those people. I found them very irritating because I preferred to think that I was the only one who got Pam's attention. But I guess kind and generous people are kind and generous to everybody. Towards the end, when I visited her, she was not alert enough to really take part in the conversation. Oh, this was when I got up to speak. This was when I spoke at that memorial service. I told about how when I would visit her towards the end, I would have to do all the talking, which is fine with me. That's my favorite kind of conversation. But one day, I went to Pam for what I knew was going to be our last visit, our final get together, our farewell chance to connect. And by some miracle, suddenly, the fog rose and Pam was her old self. She was alert, she was responsive. We chatted the way we had done so many times over the years, just like in the old days. And when the inevitable question came, "So, Annie, tell me, what are you working on?" This time, thanks to her, I had an answer.
Annie, thank you so much, Annie, for sharing. I see mercy in every one of these stories. And I also love how you go ahead and say how these people irritated you.
Well, I'm always honest. And mercy shows itself in all kinds of different ways.
Oh, yes.
And the power of friendship, well, we've all experienced that. It's
Oh,
a
yes.
high form of mercy, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is. It's, yeah. Well, it does help us to reform ourselves too, I think. It spurs us in some way.
You know something? I'm just going to quickly, I just want to share with you something I left out of the story. It's just one line, but I think it's important. When I said that I wanted to pay Pam back, what I left out was I believe in the moral truths, not of the Old Testament, not of the New Testament, but of the Beatles, who said, "The love you take is equal to the love you make." I just wanted to make sure that
Oh,
I got to share that with you.
I'm glad you did, Annie. I can't say anything else. I'm glad you did.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
Love you, Annie. Okay, now we have a quote from Anne Frank. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. We can all do something, even if it's just spreading some cheer. He tells Stephen, Stevie, Kalen, Jesus. Welcome, Zach Gruber.
Hold on. Can everybody hear me? Oh, good. Okay. All right. All right. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. I am ready. So back in 2006, I was about to host a TV party in my Los Angeles living room for the 2006 Golden Globe Awards. I loved hosting these award show TV parties. When suddenly the TV exploded and died. I'd never seen a TV combust so dramatically or suddenly before. I turned to my roommate, Tom, and I said, what are we going to do? I can't afford a new TV. And our TV party is tomorrow and my friends are coming over and we have no TV. He said, go on Craigslist and get a new TV. I never even heard of Craigslist, but it's like this flea market online. So this guy a few blocks away was selling a TV for $75, gently used. So I thought, okay, cool. I go to his address, ring the doorbell, and this shirtless, super good looking, young British guy answers the door. And he said, would you like my gently used TV? I said, yes, here's $75. I said, I'm going to use it tomorrow to entertain all my friends. We're going to have a Golden Globes viewing party. I'm cooking. Come on over if you want to. I didn't know if he'd come over. And I was really surprised that he actually did. And he joined the party. And all of my friends were so charmed by him. His name was Stephen Locke. And I instantly loved this guy. I mean, it didn't matter if my friends were gay or straight or female or male. They were all attracted to Stephen Locke because he was so charming and radiant and sexy and fun. Stephen was in his late 20s when I first met him. And he had just moved to Los Angeles from New York. He was an actor and a model, and he had just played Kim Cattrall's hairstylist in Sex and the City. And he had just starred on a big Budweiser commercial. So I thought, oh, cool, his acting career is starting to go places. This is fantastic for him. He made ends meet in LA as a dog walker, and he was walking all of West Hollywood's dogs. I swear, if you lived in West Hollywood, you wanted him as your dog walker because he was so cute. And so he was just so much fun that I invited him to all the parties I went to. He loved to dance. He loved to flirt. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. He didn't smoke, but he was a kind of rough around the edges rascal kind of guy. He had a real talent for acting. And I felt like this guy has it all, except I learned he had nobody. He had no family and he had no friends, no close friends except for me. And I had just met him on Craigslist. So, you know, wasn't like we went way back. I never thought someone as charming and radiant as Stephen Locke would, like my TV, combust so dramatically and so suddenly. The first red flag was when he wanted to be called Stevie, and he thought of himself as a rapper. And I just thought, well, this is a funny, odd, cute phase. He's a rapper now. And he did these rap songs in his little Cockney English accent about sex and women. And he was always sleeping with every beautiful young woman that walked down the street. They were in bed together like it took nothing. Anyway, I thought it was cute. I didn't think it was such a big deal. But then the Stevie rapper phase ended quickly. And then he wanted to be called Kalen. Kalen, a word he just made up. And he made up a whole new last name too. And when people make up whole new first and last names, it starts to throw me because I don't know, I guess I'm just so Ohio, that's where I was born. We're just, you know, we don't do that there. But then things got even weirder because he wanted me to accept him as Jesus, as in the second coming of Christ. And me being a lifelong Catholic, you know, I have a crucifix hanging here and I actually pray to Jesus. This was a little too much for me. This was going too far. He started to even speak to me as if he were Jesus and I was an apostle. And I believe in hearing everybody out. So I heard him out and I said, I'm just not comfortable thinking you're the second coming of Christ. And he said, well, that's okay. People didn't believe me the first time I was here either, but you will. In fact, the first time I was here, you were one of my 12 apostles. And I thought, I was? What apostle? I was hoping I was going to be Peter or John or one of the important ones, because I was his only friend. So who are these other 11, But he said, you're Philip. And I'm like, Philip? I mean, he's like one of the least, memorable apostles of Jesus. And he was kind of a little bit of a pessimist, Philip. And I'm such an optimist. I mean, I'm so optimistic. I'd be great in like a zombie apocalypse. I'm just wired optimistically all the time. So anyway, around this time, Stevie, Kaylin, Jesus became obsessed with conspiracy theories, which I don't buy into at all, and magical powers that he thought he had, and hearing ghosts talking to him. And he just became more bizarre by the day. And I started to not know who my friend was anymore. And this was my really close friend of 7 years at this point. I stopped inviting him to parties. And I knew that being Jesus wasn't just some like phase like being a rapper. I knew that there was some real deep-seated mental illness here. And I know that there's actually a clinical disorder, I can't remember the name, where you believe that you're Jesus. And it's, mental hospitals are full of people who believe they're Jesus. So as far as being Jesus goes, he actually looked the part. He had a very short crew cut when I met him, but he grew his locks very long and wavy and beautiful, like in those biblical illustrations. And his demeanor changed too. He went from being the sexy life of the party to very quietly, gently blessing me all the time. And then the cracks in the surface turned into sinkholes when in 2013, all of a sudden, he abandoned his apartment in West Hollywood. He abandoned his beautiful little dog. He wanted to flee to Las Vegas because God told him to use his magic powers in Las Vegas. Now, I love God and believe in God, but I always find it a little disturbing when people do drastic things because God told them to do that thing. I just like, you start to lose me there. And on another note, I don't think God ever told anyone to flee to Las Vegas. So apparently in Las Vegas, he lost all his money. He got beat up. He was homeless. And so 3 months later, he was on a Greyhound bus back to downtown LA, a ticket I paid for, to come back to me, his only friend. And I thought, oy vey, what am I going to do with him? I've got to have him stay with me, I guess. I had a big couch bed. So I let him stay with me a few nights until he could land a job and get back on his feet. I naively thought he would be able to get back on his feet, not realizing how cracked his mind was and how he was completely unable, tragically at 34, to be part of a functional part of the world anymore. So I worked full time at this point. I was away from home all day. Meanwhile, Jesus was at home with my roommate, Holly, who worked from home. And he was all day long telling her how he was Jesus and about her sins. And this didn't fly with her at all. And so she got freaked out. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get Jesus out of this. Having Jesus live with me was a terrible idea. I got to get him out and into some motel. And so I put him in a dirtbag Hollywood motel because I couldn't afford the Four Seasons. So there's all these cheap, junky Hollywood motels, for those of you who know Hollywood, that look like, who stays there? Oh my gosh. Well, believe it or not, they're $100 or more a night. So I was putting him in these hotels because he was my friend. I loved him. I did not want him to be homeless and beat up on the sidewalk. So I put him into these horrible cockroach dirtbag hotels every night. And every night he would burn bridges with the hotel staff, who, by the way, are just as foul as these hotels. And because he would say, I'm Jesus, and they would, the next day would call me and say, get him out of here. So I'd have to find a new horrible hotel to put him in. And it just went on and on for all of 2013, 2014, 2015, way too long. And I had nobody to help me. All my money was going to him to help him with food and toothbrushes and hotels and everything. And there was nobody to help him. I tried to get mental help for my friend, but I learned that it's way too difficult in LA to admit somebody to a mental health facility. They have to be willing to go. It's a very complicated process. And of course, he thought nothing was wrong with him, as is the case with most people with brain disorders. So this experience was the most harrowing experience of my life up to this point. I felt like there was no escaping giving all my money to him and helping him stay off the streets and really saving him from death. Well, anyway, it was the most harrowing experience of my life until a month later. This was the end of 2015. I had to suddenly move from Los Angeles to Florida to take care of my dad, who was stricken with Alzheimer's disease and was going downhill rapidly. That became the most new challenging experience of my life. And, you know, I think about God and how perhaps God, the real God, had me go through this difficult experience with Stephen as sort of a warm-up to prepare me for the impossibly difficult task of caring for my father with Alzheimer's, which was really, really much even worse, if you can believe it. So between Stephen and my father, I spent 6 straight years taking care of men with horrible brain disorders. Anyway, sorry about all this, but it's the first time I've ever told this story. Anyway, the last time I saw Stephen, I hugged him on this grungy Hollywood street corner. He smelled, he was completely tattered. Everything about him was a mess. I kissed his forehead, which was dirty. And I told him I had to move to Florida to help my father. And I probably wouldn't be seeing him ever again, because how would I ever find him? He had no phone, he had no address. He wanted to be homeless at this point. He said, I prefer living on the street and being homeless. Meet my homeless friends. And I met these extremely scary folks who he was hanging out with on the sidewalk, and they were all thrilled to be living on the sidewalk. I couldn't even comprehend it. And so I just knew that there was no way to find Stephen ever again. He didn't have social media, you know. So I have no idea if he's alive or dead right now. All I know is I did everything I could to help him, showing all that mercy and generosity and compassion and love and patience really changes a person. And I did feel changed from this experience in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. This really makes me think about the complications of mercy, all the different faces of mercy, Zach. Thank you for sharing that story. I know it's a bit difficult. Is your dad still alive?
He died in 2018.
Yeah.
But I did everything I could for him, honestly. I feel good. I did everything I could for both of them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it,
I
Zach.
do everything I could for you, Anne, too.
Oh, you do. You do.
And all my friends.
Well, you do give your all, and that's what we need in this world now. People who are willing to do that, I believe. Yeah. Okay, the next quote is from May Sarton. I would like to believe when I die that I have given myself away like a tree that sows seed every spring and never counts the loss, because it is not loss. It is adding to future life. It is the tree's way of being, strongly rooted perhaps, but spilling out its treasure on the wind. This next teller spills out her treasure now, telling the tree in me. Thank you, Dorothy Randall Gray, our last teller.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this series. Again, I love it. I love listening to stories, and I love inviting stories to come into my life through the students that I work with, and and people that I just listen to. Um, I'd like to start with a poem. I'm a poet and writer and teacher. I'd like to start with a poem, and I don't memorize any of my poems. So this is a short one. And the name of the poem is When I Was a Tree. When I was a tree, I stood my ground and never lost sight of my roots. I sheltered and shaded, gave fruit without fear, and knew there would always be more. I learned to wait, to sing with wind and dance outrageous with the sky. My rings embraced rain, the touch of hands, the goodbye of last year's breath. I knew more then than I know now. And sometimes I remember almost. So when I was a child and I had watermelon, I swallowed a seed, or had an orange and I swallowed a seed, and I drank water or some kind of liquid, I thought, oh my God, a tree is going to grow in my stomach. I read everything about science, in third and fourth grade. And I know if you plant a seed, something's going to grow. So in class, they would have us plant beans, and we plant one bean, and then next day or 2 days later, there would be something growing. So I thought, oh my God, there's going to be a tree growing in my stomach. And sometimes I would like press my stomach and see if I could feel the branches, coming out through my stomach, and just having this vision of a tree growing inside. Um, so the idea of trees and the visitation of trees has stayed with me for the longest time. I have a friend named Jean who has been in the hospital several times. And when she goes to the hospital, she takes her art supplies and she paints trees. The last time she was in the hospital for about a week or so, and she painted 300 trees, and she gives them to the hospital staff so everybody has trees, and she always paints them and gives them away. And I remember there was a friend of mine who had a housekeeper, and they had a Christmas tree. And the housekeeper said, if you put a little vodka in the water, the tree's gonna last until Valentine's Day. And then I put hearts on the tree. So I have this image of a Christmas tree with hearts on it. And I have not tried putting vodka in the water, but I'm sure it worked for her. This connection with trees even lasted through my love of paper. I love paper, and you haven't been to my apartment, but the paper around is really something, of all kinds of paper. But when I was in elementary school, the teacher's supply closet was my motivation for wanting to be a teacher. I thought, oh man, look at all that paper. They were like pads with lines, and they were notebooks with black and white speckled covers, and there was a rainbow in the closet, and that was the construction paper. And I just thought that was like a treasure chest. So paper was my motivation for wanting to become a teacher. And I didn't even think at the time, I didn't make a connection to the paper being something from a tree. Um, my connection with trees also extends to my apartment. I love wood. I love wooden bookcases, wooden tables, wooden everything. And I also have a collection of sticks. Now, when I went to walking in the woods, I would always find a stick, to walk with. And then for some reason, when I finished walking in the woods, I would ask the stick, do you want to come with me, or do you want to stay in the forest? And if it didn't want to come with me, I would just leave it. And so all of these things are happening in my life, and all these little connections were going on, and I didn't really make much of them. And then one day I went to a past life reader, Dr. Singh, and he used to give readings at the New York Theological Seminary every Sunday for free. And in one of the readings, he told me that I used to be a tree. And that's where I learned to give. I thought, okay, I like to give. So what I found, what I discovered was that the giving that I seemed to be destined to do was through teaching. And I would give students and people in all kinds of populations, I give them the opportunity and the outlet to tell their stories. And so that was my giving to the world. Sometime later, I had another reading, a divination by an African priest who was from the Dagara tradition, trained by Malidoma Some, and they they threw different objects, and from the position of the objects that landed on the table, the teller said, "You know, you are married to a tree." I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this is this tree again." Uh, and I was also told that I needed to ask the tree for permission to engage in relationships. Now, I used to live in Echo Park and on a hill and in a house that my friends called the tree house because there were 40 windows and there were windows in every wall. And so outside my window, there was this huge tree. And whenever there was a large wind blowing, the tree would just scrape against my window as if to remind me, hey, you know, you're supposed to be asking me for permission. So whoever you got in that bed with you, you didn't ask me. Maybe that's why that particular relationship didn't work out. I don't know, but I'm not blaming the tree. So I've had this connection with trees and it started getting deeper. I started reading more about trees. I remember that that poem that we learned in elementary school, Louisa May Alcott. I think that should never see a poem lovely as a tree. So I started going deeper and reading more about trees and learning more about them and learning all kinds of things about how they communicate. I learned that trees communicate with each other. They are connected with this underground network of fungi. And there's even a Netflix documentary about it called things called Fabulous Fungi. And apparently the older trees send out messages to the younger trees to teach them how to grow, to tell them things about um, what kinds of growth they need to do and how they need to protect themselves, all kinds of communication going on underground. I think that that energy of communication was something that I also connected with. I recently applied to do a residency at the Joshua Tree Artist residence in Joshua Tree, of course. And as I was preparing the application for it, I was doing some research and I read about how in 50 years, it said that Joshua trees, 90% of Joshua trees would be gone. I felt I felt the energy of it. I felt the energy of loss. And I started feeling like, hey, I am connected with these trees more than just visually or spiritually. There's some kind of way that this tree um, kinship is manifesting in me to such an extent that I'm feeling the sense of loss. I felt so saddened by not only the loss of the trees, the Joshua trees, but when I would read about how they were destroying the rainforest so that they could have more land for cattle to raise to make hamburgers for McDonald's. I felt the sense of loss. I could feel and think that those trees were saying something like, have mercy. We have given you so many things. There are cures that we have in us. There are all kinds of discoveries that have yet to be made, and you're destroying us. I believe they were saying, have mercy. When I read about a couple who were building a mega house in Joshua Tree, and they destroyed 35 Joshua trees and buried them, I felt that sense of loss, as if I was losing a friend as if I was losing somebody who I was really connected to. So this sense of loss and communication continued to build and continued to be even more of a connection, to such an extent that when recently I saw an article and I saw a video about the fires, and they had this one video of a giant sequoia tree, those trees that are thousands of years old, and there was a fire burning inside the tree. I started crying. I could feel and sense that tree saying, have mercy, have mercy. Because there are so many things that are happening with climate change that we can do, we can make a difference. And I felt that I have to do something in my own way as a creative person. So I started advocating and I joined the Audubon Society and I joined the Nature's Conservancy. And I started collecting photographs of trees. I started making photographs and collecting ones because the communication started happening with me. I was walking with a friend of mine in Huntington Gardens, and I saw the roots and trunk of this tree that was spreading out over the land, and they looked like an elephant. And I said to my friend Barbara, I said, oh, that tree used to be an elephant. And she said, how do you know? I said, that's what it told me. And about a week later, I saw a photograph, a quarter of a photograph of an elephant with just the eye and some of the wrinkles around its forehead and under the eye. And it looked just like that root, that part of the tree that was an elephant or used to be. So I started developing stories about trees, the ones that dance. Some trees look like they're dancing. I actually officiated a burial of of somebody's ashes when we were at a nature place in Petaluma. There was a buckeye tree, and something about the buckeye tree is amazing because the buckeye tree has a portal that looks like a female, looks like a yoni, a female portal, and the tree starts opening up to such an extent that you could walk inside of it. And I thought, this is a real connection because the tree pieces that I collect, the branches that I collect, they're all yoni branches. Those are the ones that started finding their way to me. So we buried somebody's ashes right in that buckeye tree. And we each walked in one by one and said goodbye to Christine and put her ashes down there so that she could grow along with the tree. So the idea of communicating with trees is something that has really stayed with me. I'm developing a whole series of stories that I say are written by the trees and through the trees and with me in conjunction with the trees and in conjunction with that part of me that used to be a tree. So I would like to share with you a piece that I wrote that was written through me. And this was written by a branch that was sitting by a mulching machine. Now, these mulching machines, they take branches and the branches get fed into them and they turn the trees into mulch and all kinds of sawdust. I saw this one tree, this one branch laying on the ground. And I think and I feel it was calling to me and saying, have mercy. That tree did not want to be mulched. That piece of wood was connecting somehow with me and wrote this poem called Fallen. In the night of endless stars, in the wishful rain that fell to earth, I fell with it, fallen like an angel, fallen like a fall from grace, a limb between branches, a woman among the weeds, broken like a hungry heart. I called your name. Wind ripped and storm tossed, jagged edged and helpless, anonymous as a song without name. I called to you and waited, fallen like night falls without breaking, fallen, like I've fallen out of favor, I called your name. You caught the scent of my womanness, the open eye between my legs, my place of birth, and forgetting my matrix and my madness. You took me home, softened the bark of my being in the falling rain, let me drink for the salt and the sky of it, stripped me down to my secrets, sanded me smooth, and let my roughness fall to the floor. You anointed me with oil and the fragrance of your name, with the secret and scent of dreams I hadn't dreamed. You twisted my soul with transcendence and touch, and turned my womanhood wanting into no longer waiting. I know your name like I know my own. I have called it many times. You are love, and I am the beloved. So I share that with you as this branch shared itself with me. And this is the branch that fell and wrote the poem. I put a woman's face in here because that's where it belonged. And I just want to ask you not only to think about trees and how they're affecting all of us, because if you're breathing, you can thank a tree. And also, I want to close with this quotation that said, if I were a tree, I would have no reason to love a human. Let's connect. Let's stay connected with things that are larger than us, that are around us, that are inside of us. And so I bring this to you from the tree in me, and I thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy, for sharing this. The Tucson, Arizona Water Company sent something with their bill last month. And it said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But to do it today is good too.
It's never too late. Just one thing, there are 5 billion trees that are destroyed, that are cut down every year. And if we could just plant a tree in remembrance of people, in remembrance of the loved ones past, then I think that would make a big difference in this world of ours.
Well, it helps me to just hear the strength of your relationship, Dorothy. It really does help me. It helps heal to hear this story, I believe. So that's it. And we're going to get to have people ask questions of everybody if they want, or comment, or say something. So we'll unmute.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to share something with around Dorothy's trees about not 20, but about before. It's show and tell time. Marinka Yosifon painted. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
It is called Woman Tree.
Ah, okay. Beautiful.
And your daughter painted that, right?
It is my daughter,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
she had an obsession with tree, but this is called Woman Tree.
Oh, yes. That's the name of a workshop series that I did.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and everybody had branches, and they created beautiful things with the branches. I had beads, and I had pearls, and I had all kinds of things, and I just very, very last thing, when people were working with these branches, there's something else that happened, and I hope at one point I can give one of the Woman Tree workshops, but sometimes because the trees were connected with the earth at one point, in one workshop, people started coming through. Like one woman started thinking about this couple, and she kept hearing this name, and she went home and looked it up. And it turned out that it was a name of a couple that had been living in that area 100 years ago, and that couple and the name started coming through as she was putting together this Woman Tree piece, the branch. So yeah. So we're all connected.
Yes, we
I
are.
see a New Mexico house and that's the lady who just presented. And I recognize my beloved New Mexico and the beautiful wood vigas she has in her ceiling.
Oh, yes, that's Raquel.
Yes, beautiful. Yes.
Yes, makes me homesick.
Well, you can come and visit. Ann knows my address.
Yes, I do. You can go visit Jerry.
Next time I can get finally past COVID to go back to New Mexico.
So we welcome more. We welcome more. If you want to have any comments, I'm certainly thankful for you guys tackling this.
The stories were so powerful,
Yeah.
so powerful. And you picked well, Anne, for a theme. It was beautiful.
They picked me though. These guys said yes to it. It was wonderful.
And I love these evenings, and I thank you for putting them together. I want to take a second to say something that happens at every one of these, and I never get a chance to mention it because afterwards we're always, looking out at the sea on that balcony and shaking hands and selling CDs and that stuff. Every time I come into these evenings, narcissistically prepared to show off what a wonderful wordsmith I am. And then over the course of the evening, I remember that everybody else you bring in is interesting and wonderful and lyric in one way or another. And I am just so honored that you keep bringing me in to play with such good people and in such excellent company. And I thank you for it. That's all.
Oh, Dylan. Well, I love your.
Dylan.
I love to shower in your deluge. So.
What a line, Anne. I'm impressed.
Shower in my deluge, by the way, was my first foray into porn.
And I wasn't even there for it.
See?
My loss.
I just wanted to say to Zach that my heart goes out to you. When you were commenting back with Anne, you said that you had done your best for both of those people, your dad and your friend Steve. And I just want to say that you went way beyond the call of duty. And I think that your behavior, I think that certain
Please
cultural,
use the
certain
spoon,
cultural
put it
and
on your plate.
regional religious backgrounds can set us up for doing that, But Mother Teresa had a big institution behind her, to be doing the kinds of things that we would all love to do. I mean, you can't live in LA right now without being confronted perennially every day with
Yes.
what you were dealing with. And my heart just breaks for you, I left college years ago and ran into a friend who had been in college with me who got into drugs and had mental health issues. And fortunately for me, my sister's friend was a psychotherapist, and she said, "Who do you think you are, an angel of mercy?" And because I was wanting to do something for this person, but it was beyond my capability. And I'm not saying what you did was beyond your capability. I think what you did was wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was so difficult. And I really appreciate Anne the letting me tell this story here. I've never told it ever. I've hardly even told my friends this story. It was something I kept to myself. And amazingly, one of the people who tuned into this Zoom is a distant relative of mine in Prague. And he's watching from the Czech Republic.
Wow.
So we have people all over the world watching this. It's incredible to me.
Well, mercy is a power. Mercy is a power that we are endowed with. And like any other power, it enables us we have to decide how to use it. And I think I love what my neighbor says, in God's economy, nothing is wasted.
Right. That's very well said.
Yeah, I remembered it because it is well said. All that you did, Jack, is not wasted.
No.
even though we can look and think that it is, we know there's a greater economy. I mean, I'm learning to see that now. We all are learning to see the greater beyond our little plans for the day, my little worries for today. No, 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 no. There's something bigger going on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I found with my stuff and taking care of my mother with Alzheimer's and going through similar trajectory is that you're able to, and the understanding you had to bring to yourself as you work with other people, you're able to help other people do those same transitions. And that in turn shows you the value of what you have gained and how important. It's almost like you're given the opportunity of being an angel to help somebody else. At the time, it weighs heavy, but it really is, in some ways, a gift to be able to extend those gifts, that knowledge, and to help other people in the coping. It just, when going through it, it's painful. And the grieving is so hard. But once you pass that, it's a real gift you can give other people. And that's really made a difference for me.
And you learn that you're so much stronger than you ever knew.
Yes. Oh my, absolutely. If anyone had ever told you you could have done this, there's no way you would have believed them.
No.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really appreciate being here tonight with all of you and hearing these amazing stories. And I just wanted to share that every one of these stories for me held the power of mercy. I agree with Anne in that so much, that it's framed a lot of the time in our culture as a weakness. And I think that, when you really look at it case by case, it does nothing but give strength.
Yes.
So thank you all for sharing your strength with me.
Oh, Allie, thank you for saying that. I just think it's contagious and we can learn so much from it.
And I just so enjoyed that the theme took us into so many different versions of what mercy is. And that's the beauty behind this event is just seeing mercy through the eyes of so many different writers and talented people. Zach, I was so pulled into your story. I found myself Googling his name, thinking the story was going to go in one direction, and then it went into a completely different direction. It was, I literally had to stop once those things started happening to him mentally. And I thank each and every one of you who shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys too. I'm sorry. My name's Ashton. I haven't been to the storytelling for a while. I actually was sick for a while and not able to participate. But Jacques, it's so great seeing you again. I remember
Ashton, you're
sharing the
such a great
stage with
storyteller.
you.
I hope I hear you again.
Thank you. But your story really struck me. I know someone who I think Messiah or God complex is what it may be called, in psychological circles, and know someone like that. And, I went to New York for several months to take care of my dad when he was passing. And, I resonated with that with you. And Susie, your story, and also seeing Lesser Moore here. Something that I went through, and doctors said how miraculous the recovery was, and they never saw anything like it before. And, and then hearing your story, it just made me know that in all of our, it's like, I don't even want to say faiths, in all of our spiritual truths, whatever they are, there are these miracles of healing, these shaman, these doctors like Lessert and the doctors who worked on me and my God, who will bring us back from where we never thought we would come back. And I just loved your story as well, Susie, and everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Anne, as always.
Oh, thank you.
And Pastor Aaron, thank you.
It's so good to see you. And I just wanted to express my appreciation to all of the tellers and everyone who took the time to be here tonight. If you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to read the chat, because there's just an outpouring of expressions of gratitude and thanks, and the ways all the stories touch people in different ways. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And we have also recorded this evening. And so once we get everyone's permission and the like, we will have it on YouTube. It's a little bit different. There's something powerful and special about us being together and being with one another and hearing the stories. But there is a gift in having the recording of it afterwards to share with friends and family who might be touched and moved and impacted by these powerful stories that were shared tonight. So I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart over here for being here and for sharing tonight, and to draw your attention to the chat as well.
Erin, thank you for all the work you do to make this happen, for the screen that you put up beforehand. I mean, you know, Erin is the pastor at our church. She doesn't have to do this, and she threw herself into this, and she does it so well and takes care of us so well. I still can't believe it.
It's my honor and my privilege. 100%.
And I want to thank all the tellers again too, because that you showed up today and did this means a lot to everybody, to me especially, but to everybody else, obviously. And Dale, I think you're up there. I see you. Yes, Dale. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything? Are we ready to go? I guess there's chat. I don't see chat on mine, but
Oh, I see it growing. So I'll have to open it up, but it's during this time of isolation, it's so wonderful that you kept this going. And one of the things that I love with the stories, my life and my family is such a wonderful mixture. And Annie, in your story, I love the Jewish Quaker connection. With all of these things and my Native American connection, all these things. And it just reminds me how little we know of what life is, and how wonderful, if you embrace it, it's always something that's like a new star that just bursts, and how wonderful that you get to experience it.
Yes.
And right, instead of these people who are so trapped right now, and you're the antithesis of that, and I love it. I just love it.
I feel that I have received mercy from every storyteller and every person here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. I'm glad you were here.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Is it time to go?
Yes.
Friday night.
We will send you off with a lot of love.
We will, and we'll see you.
All of you.
Take care, everyone.
So
Happy New
much.
Year. Healthy New Year. Stay healthy.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Goodbye, everybody.
Happy New
Happy
Year,
New Year.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, wonderful
right.
tellers. Thank you, wonderful
Thank you.
audience. Thank you,
Thank you.
Pastor Aaron. Thank you, beautiful Dr.
Everyone.
Sis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Brother.
Who's Uncle Brother? Where's Uncle Brother?
Lessert Moore.
Where is he?
He should be right there. Is he there? Do you see him? Uncle Brother, can you unmute? Can you say something, Mr. Heap Big Indian Medicine Man?
Oh.
Oh, perfect. I see you. Yeah. I saw you before I even saw your name. I knew it was you. Good to meet you, Lessert.
Good to meet all of you too.
Yeah.
I have to say this about my sister, Susie Duff.
Good.
Every time you see her, hand her a roll of toilet paper. That will keep reminding her that her butt is well.
Whatever works.
So I can drink my apple juice and eat my supper, because she usually calls me right when I'm eating.
Well, Lessert, I'm Scotch, so I'll just wind off a little bit of toilet paper to give her, not the whole roll.
Yeah, there's some things in Indian I could say, but you wouldn't understand what I'm saying in my language, but it would definitely crack you up.
Well, I get the feeling. Say it. Say it. I'll get the feeling. You say it, Lesser.
Atawian tankokieshni, la takieshni, samana ochi palo.
I love how you said it. I love it. Thank you, Lesser.
Oh.
The feeling come through. The feeling come through.
You know, one of my teachers was a man by the name of Frank Foolscrow. That was my grandfather.
Mhm.
And I listened to all your stories. And I want to ask you all this question. It's about mercy. But why are we here on Mother Earth? The question people have been trying to ask for thousands of years, why we're here on Mother Earth.
Mhm.
Old man Foolscrow Grandpa used to say we're here for one reason. That's to learn what this is. And once we learn what this is, like Susie's butt, then we heal it and we can go home. Because we understand what the flesh is. And my grandma used to say, you can understand the flesh as a baby this big, that big, or at our age. But when you understand it, then you get to go home. And that is what really is mercy is that understanding why we're here on Mother Earth and then finally getting to go home. So that's my lecture for tonight. Oh,
Thank you, Lesser. I just know that you'll be going home.
well, yeah, not for a while.
No, but a while is so relative.
Yeah.
I'm on my way. I'm on my way home.
Oh yeah, see all this hair right here? All
Yes.
gray. Used to be pretty black. 5 daughters and Susie Duff gave me this.
Well, look at Susie Duff's hair. Maybe you gave her gray hair too.
We did. Me and Larry Sellers gave her that.
Yeah, okay.
You guys want to hear a story?
Of course.
When I
Yes.
first met Susie. This was years and years and years ago, back in the 70s, I think, wasn't it, Suze? Back like in the late 70s when Larry first come to my reservation and we start praying together. So we do what we call the ceremony Sundance. And that was about the second year, I think Larry came and Susie came. So she'll turn this whole story around, but mine sounds better. So she come and she had on this mini skirt and this halter top, and we had like 200 dancers, and most of them are all men, you know. And then we had probably 500-600 spectators there, and she comes and lays down because she's driving the whole way from Rapid City to the reservation in Rosebud. So she was tired, so she laid down there. But eventually, as she was laying,
oh my God,
we seen everything.
No, you are so insane. this never. I just want everyone here to know this never happened. And every time he tells this story, and I say, Uncle Brother, this never happened, he goes, yeah, I know, but mine is such a more interesting story. So, I was like,
you know, I
was dressed like a.
She got on this mini skirt. She's
Oh
trying
my
to
God.
you know. She got on this mini skirt and this halter top. And you know, when we're praying to the tree and we do this Sundance, we always have to concentrate, put our mind and our heart and our spirit on top of that tree. I had 200 dancers.
He's insane.
Men dancers, all not looking at the tree, but looking where Susie was laying at the drum.
I believe you, Lesser.
My dad came over and said, go tell her to get up. And I said, I'm not going over there. Tell Larry. And Larry said, I'm not going over there either. So we just let our dancers enjoy that sight.
Susie,
I
I
changed the whole story around. Trust
me. Believe Lesser. Do not believe.
Change the whole story around.
He is a Heoka. He is
very important question for you then, Susie. Would you like me to make sure to keep this portion of the recording on for the YouTube presentation?
You can do whatever you want.
That's a yes. Well,
Well,
thank
friends,
you, everybody. I guess we'll call it a night now.
Right,
before we
right,
get-
right.
Before we get Susie.
On that note,
hot water.
Oh,
nothing
don't-
wrong with
Don't
closing
worry, in 10
joy.
minutes, I'll get a nasty call.
I've got the
well, you
phone in
better
my
start
hand.
eating now.
Got the
I
phone in
got
my
the phone
hand.
right
That's
here,
right.
ready to go.
Exactly.
Well, good night, everybody. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you
everybody.
next
Thank you,
time.
Anne.
Amy, well done. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
You're
Pastor
so welcome.
Aaron.
Take care.